kick it off here. Aston Villa 1, Arsenal 0. John McGinn goal assisted by Leon Bailey in I think it was the fourth or fifth or sixth minute, real early on. Probably the biggest week for Villa, like I said, in their recent history, beating Manchester City, treble winners, and then beating top of the table Arsenal, seeing themselves slide up the top into third now. I don't really know where I stand on this one because I didn't get to watch it. I just got to see the highlights. Is it more of Villa being good or Arsenal being bad, or where do we all stand on this, people who watch the game?
So let me give you just the quick hitting top hits, and then Dylan, I'm pretty sure you were watching it, weren't you? Yeah. So what it felt like to me watching this game was in the first 30 minutes, Aston Villa hit a runner's high, was a freight train. There was no stopping them whatsoever. They were going to get a goal. Did not matter. And then for the first time since I've watched Villa this season, from basically the 38th minute to the end of the game, it was squeaky bum time. The entire they look dead a little bit. They sheer will. They're coached so well. They're so well drilled that they didn't give up a goal and they don't make mistakes. And I think that's so key. Arsenal didn't particularly play well, I didn't think, but it didn't matter who was out there. Like prime Brazil in the first 35 minutes, Villa was going to get a goal. Like it just was going to happen. And then it kind of was like survival at that point. Dylan, what were your thoughts?
Kind of the same. They were bats out of hell to start that game. Like literally, it was only, to your point, a matter of time. But like, I don't think it was an Arsenal being bad thing. Like I think it's more of what we've seen of Arsenal, where defensively they were still pretty sound. It's just they had some unlucky moments. They hit a few posts, and then outside that, like, I'm not going to say they should be complaining about some of the things that Arteta finally learned that he's just not going to say anything about, as unfortunately I've seen firsthand with the Wolves as well. You just got to keep your mouth shut, unfortunately, and hope that calls go your way. But, like, at this point, it's a fortress. Like, you have to call a spade a spade. Like, you go to Villa, just expect to lose. And that's what's going to propel them into this. And I think it's, if anything, it's more, I haven't lost faith in what Arsenal can do. It's more the justification of, I think we're allowed to actually talk about Villa being in this title race at this point.
So, Nick, before I let you go, the one other thing I'll say that I think is so key is, like, Villa won the two biggest games of their season and maybe of the past 5 years of them being in the Prem. I know they won a European trophy. I'm not trying to belittle that. But they won these two games two different ways. And I think that's awesome. Like, that makes me feel like Unai Emery is actually, like Michael, we said a couple pods ago, he is a top 3 manager in this league, for sure.
Yeah.
But
100%.
There was a discussion, there's a few points that I think after this game I heard them talk about on NBC for this game and another game that we'll probably talk about later. But I think Unai's at the perfect club too, because I think for what he wants to do and the total control that Villa gives him to actually do like player recruitment and what's actually happening with the staff coming in and analytics and all that stuff, compared to like there's people saying like, hey, maybe he'll go to United, you know, if it doesn't work out with Ten Hag or somewhere bigger. But I think like this is the place for him to be because he has that control compared to what we saw him do at Arsenal. Like, I'm not saying I don't think he would be successful at a bigger club, but it's like, hey, right below that second tier club is exactly where he can thrive. And it's the same thing that probably should have happened with Potter too, and should have realized where he was and not go Icarus near the sun. So like, I think it's just a perfect marriage right now, and it's like sky's the limit as much as it sucks for me to say for Villa.
I think that's absolutely correct though, because like Villa don't not have money. Villa have money. Like and it's not just from a Grealish signing. They have money. When Unai was the most successful, he was at Sevilla. Mm-hmm. And like this is Sevilla in the Premier League. Like they have money to blow. He's very good at finding young talent. Like he's going to be able to take the Grealish money, which they already did, and turn it into a bunch of great players. He's going to take Douglas Luiz and turn him into a bunch of great players. He's going to take probably Ollie Watkins at some point and turn him into a few good players too. Like this is just, they're going to be able to rinse and repeat, I think, as long as he's there. So.
Yeah, I was just adding exactly what Dylan said. I was going to say he's the perfect mid-major coach. Like you said, I mean, granted, he had some issues with the club at Arsenal that he had to deal with, but you look at Arsenal and PSG. He did what he's supposed to do in Paris. He wins the league, but you look at his record in Europe, and he can do what he wants. He can get a bunch of guys that are hungry that want to get to the next level, and his motivation, his tactics, his coaching style, his grit that he can instill in a team fits perfectly, as you said, with that second tier team, and you can make them overachieve. So I mean, do we call him Shaka Smart at Texas? I don't know. But, probably, yeah. But I hate it, but this is what we needed, honestly, after the last 3 years. Like, of just City dominating so much and just kind of, like, you always knew they were going to come back. Like, this nice wrench in terms of the shakeup of who's where and what. It's pretty awesome from just watching the league. And hopefully over the long term, it'll sit here, everybody within 2 or 3 points all year.
Before we move to the next one, too, can we all just agree that winning at PSG is not a barometer of success? Nick, I think you could win at PSG, dude. And I don't think you're a bad coach, but I think anyone could win at PSG. Hey, if you don't win at PSG, I think if you don't win at PSG, we should talk about that.
I'll take a championship wherever I can get one.
Exactly.
All right, John, I see you kind of took the reins here. So Arsenal, we're all talking about Aston Villa. But my thing is with Arsenal right now, we've talked about their offense, right? We obviously think they're a title contender. Dylan has them winning. Dylan also just said here Villa deserve to be in that conversation. So really, that's top of the table can kind of go either way. Talked about VAR a little bit. Where do we stand on the handball call?
It's the right call.
Correct. Okay. And then I watched the highlights. I just want to make sure because
no, it's not you asking it. I think if anyone says it should have been a goal, you're
brother.
Dumb. Like brother. I do. If you think that the offensive
you're not on the corners of the internet I'm on.
No, I'm not. If you think that the ball can hit the offensive player's hand and then within seconds there can be a goal for that offense, I think that you shouldn't watch this sport.
It's in the rule book. It's not a goal. It's like a literal rule.
Yeah.
This is
I don't know.
This is me getting us on the record. We're getting on the right side here. All right. The other one, which wasn't even in the highlight, actually, I had to go find like the actual video of it to check. The kick out on Jesus not being called. So I just want to say that literally was a penalty in the Crystal Palace Liverpool game.
But all right. Before we all answer, is it a penalty or not? There's not one person on this panel. I know there's not. Before we answer that, it's not. There's not one person on this panel that wanted that to be a penalty. I know that. And Dylan, you have them winning the league.
Which, may I add, I'm very happy that drunk Dylan put that bet in the night before because after winning that game, the odds went down by 1,000 points. So plus 2,600 to plus 1,600. I'm not going to say I'm Nostradamus or anything, but I did not want that called.
Yeah. I don't think... So, I mean, I understand that it's been called before, Michael. I'm glad it didn't get called. If it happens to City next week, I'm pissed. I'm so pissed off.
For sure. My thing here is, again, like I've mentioned, I'm scraping in, I'm on TikTok getting 4 or 5 pictures in a row of just crying from Arsenal fans. And listen, I think what you need to do as a fan, I think that there's 2 different ways you can go here. If you're like a Chelsea fan, your players play poorly, you just hate them and you sell them and you get new ones, okay? That's just what you do if you're a Chelsea fan. If you're a Liverpool fan, or I would say to a degree a Manchester United fan as well, I think you are sitting there and you're maybe putting a little bit... You love your players probably a little bit too much, and you don't give them enough criticism sometimes. I think I love Darwin Núñez to death, but I think sometimes you got to sit there and go, definitely needs to be scoring from 3 yards out. I'm just saying, the amount of no criticism to those Arsenal players. Odegaard missing 2 shots from 12 yards out. Gabby Jesus not being clinical enough finisher. Bukayo Saka, I thought he was one of their best players. I think if you're an Arsenal fan, yes, you can sit there and be upset about the inconsistencies in VAR, but you have to expect more out of your players going forward, especially when there is this blanket over you that offensively you are nowhere near where you were last year. Most of their goals, not most, as in literally most, but too many of their goals are coming from set pieces. Too many of their goals are coming from penalties. Open play, they are abysmal. And I think if you're sitting there watching that game, you have all this possession, you're in and around Aston Villa's box. Never once did it seem you were going to score an actual goal. And I know, you had one go in off a hand and stuff like that, and the rules with handballs are weird. But I just think, man, you really, really, really have to sit there and actually start looking at your players. And why isn't Odegaard performing? Why isn't, Declan Rice is one of your best scorers, and he's supposed to be your CDM. I just think that before we start crying about the referees, which are terrible all around, and I agree, you got to maybe look at your players a little bit. And I just think that they need to figure it out, or they're not going to be up there.
It's fair. I mean, you're not going to hear me saying other supporting groups should be crying about it, because, like, if there's a team that's been fucked more by the refs this year, I think it's the Wolves, to be completely honest. So, like, get over it. I agree with what you're saying. The players need to do it, but, like, this game isn't, to me, this game isn't a knock on Arsenal. Like, should they have probably won? Sure. But I, actually think Villa is a top 4, potentially top team in this league, at least how they're playing current. Like, power rankings wise, they're number 1 right now. So, like, especially at home. So, like, it shouldn't be, you can cry about the refs all you want, right? And you should finish. But, like, in terms of, like, oh, no, Arsenal sucks now, like, to me, that's not the case. Like, it's a tough environment. You lost. It happens. Like, move on.
That's for sure. And I feel like Arsenal fans are a little bit like, the only reason we lost this game was because of the refs. Otherwise, we would have smashed Aston Villa. I don't think that's the case, 1. And 2, I think you could find, you couldn't count on 2 hands how many games this year have been, like, dramatically affected by referee calls in some way, shape, or form. And again, I just think, if you want to be like an actual human being and somebody who is, like, paying attention to this stuff and, like, push your team forward in some sense, you got to be a little bit realistic. And I just think there's a lot of not realism going around right now. So that's the only thing. I just thought it's interesting because I don't think they played that bad, but if they lose, it's just never their fault, never the player's fault.
I'll do the last point here. Not clutch yet. Arsenal as a team, not clutch. Like, don't have the gene. Don't have the clutch.
It's funny though
dog.
because they
not
haven't yet clutch this year.
But we were just talking about this 2 weeks ago that they
don't they have like 8
goals,
goals?
And they don't.
Yeah, like what's it like being clutch in December and November? What has that gotten them? They're not clutch. This team is not going to win this year.
Well, I know.
Like,
Villa
I'll say
is. I already established that.
That's fine. That's fine. This Arsenal team, I just don't think they're clutch. So that's my last point.
I guess if by definition, if you're saying you can't be clutch in this time, then you have no proof that they're clutch or not necessarily.
They're Iowa football. That's what they are.
But this is the other thing
So it
too.
looks like that
they're
sometimes.
only 5 goals off the top goal scorer. Like, that's also not a good narrative either. Like, they score.
Right.
They're just
But
not
it's
clutch.
how they're getting their goals. It's how they're getting their goals.
Fair.